dinners, where we ate her famous rice stuffing. It's really good. And having lost my mother in 2013, Diane has lent me her ears, given me hugs, and poured me a glass of wine when I needed it. Like me, she's also invested in haunting and complicated stories that unfold when belief and trauma coincide. It is therefore my sincere pleasure to talk a little about Diane's legacy as a great scholar and teacher of folklore, and as a passionate advocate for communities dealing with serious health and social crises. The following is adapted from a bio she sent me. Diane came to Indiana University in 2010 after 24 years teaching in the Department of Folklore at Memorial University of Newfoundland, where she served as professor and chair of the Department of Folklore and held a cross-appointment as professor of community medicine. In 2009, she was named University Research Professor, the highest distinguished professor position awarded in Memorial. Despite the move, she retains an adjunct faculty position at Memorial University in both folklore and community medicine, and is still active in the supervision of several doctoral students. She has been the professor of folklore and ethnomusicology at Indiana University for 11 years, during which time she served as chair of the department between 2012 and 2015, and director of the Indiana University Folklore Institute. As such, she chaired the two largest PhD programs in folklore in the United States. Diane's research and teaching specializations include folk belief, folk religion, folk medicine, cultural issues in healthcare, risk perception, HIV/AIDS, epidemics and culture, stigmatized illnesses, legend, personal narrative, ethnography of communications, folklore and violence, folklore and trauma, folklore and disaster, social justice and applied folklore. Woo. Her interest in belief studies began with her BA in comparative religion at Memorial University, and she continued her interest in both folk religion and folk medicine, earning an MA in 1983 and a PhD in 1987 in folklore at the University of Pennsylvania, an excellent institution, I would say. Over the years, Diane has come to specialize in issues concerning the differences between vernacular and institutional discourses, particularly in relation to health, education, and law. She has supervised, sat on graduate committees or examination committees of over 200 students at Memorial University, Indiana University, Western Kentucky University, Ohio State University, and Sheffield University. In 2020, she won the Trustees Teaching Award from Indiana University. I'm going to go on, but I think that deserves a round of applause. Diane is the author of numerous works on popular belief, health, folklore and law, folklore narrative, ethnography of communication, folklore and sexuality, applied folklore, and trauma and violence. Her research and publications are largely interdisciplinary, bringing the skills of a folklorist to discourses in medicine, public health, sexuality, research, education, human rights, and the law. In 2008, she co-authored Haunting Experiences, Ghosts in Contemporary Folklore, winner of the 2009 Brian McConnell Award. Her 2004 book, Once Upon a Virus, AIDS, Legends, and a Vernacular Risk Perception, received a nomination from the AFS Folklore Fellows Award for the Best Book in Folklore in the last 3 years. Once Upon a Virus also was chosen as the book selection for the 2005 Text and Community Discussion Forum at the American Folklore Society meeting, and was chosen as one of the 7 featured nonfiction volumes of the 2008 Fall for the Book Literary Festival at George Mason University. In addition to these volumes, Diane is co-editor of Behind the Mask, Vernacular Culture in the Time of COVID, which is in press, Unfinished Stories, Problematizing Narrative Completion, 2021, The Stigmatized Vernacular, Where Reflexivity Meets Undeniability, 2016, 9/11 and After, Folklore in the Times of Terror, 2009, Reckless Vectors, The Infecting Other in HIV/AIDS Law, 2005, and she's the editor of one of the earliest interdisciplinary HIV/AIDS anthologies, Talking AIDS, Interdisciplinary Perspectives on Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, 1991. She additionally is the author of numerous articles, book chapters, monographs, and white papers published in national and international medical and folklore venues, and another round of applause for her publications. Important and compelling work. So over the last 25 years, Diane's research has extended into applied and public arenas. This is really important. She has been extensively involved in health priority setting and policy making initiatives, including an appointment in the Canadian National HIV/AIDS Committee responsible for setting Canada's policy and priorities as the country entered phase 2 of the federal HIV/AIDS initiative, and an appointment to the Executive Advisory Board for a high-profile international research policy consortium called TELLME, Transparent Communication in Epidemics, whose mandate was to develop models for improved risk communication during infectious disease crisis for implementation by public health government offices across the European Union. She participated in a think tank for the Social Sciences and Humanities in HIV/AIDS Research Institute, sponsored by HIV, Social, Behavioral, and Epidemiological Studies Unit at the University of Toronto, as a consultant on health and gender for Health Canada, and served as a consultant on HIV in marginal populations for the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research, a research group participant on emerging illnesses and society for Emory University and the Center for Disease Control. She also consulted for the Newfoundland United Council of Churches HIV/AIDS Education Initiative, a consultant for AIDS and the Arts Project of the Arkansas Council of the Arts, advisory panel member for the Live Review with People with HIV Collaborative Oral History Project through the North Carolina Humanities Council, a visiting HIV/AIDS educator for the Newfoundland and Labrador AIDS Community, and HIV/AIDS cultural consultant for Newfoundland and Labrador Provincial Department of Justice, and as a consultant to the American Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt. Diane worked with the Newfoundland Labrador Law Reform Society on Land Ownership Policy and co-worked as program chairperson for the Philadelphia Folk Song Society and chair for 7 years of the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Festival. Diane has been an active member of a number of scholarly organizations, most particularly the Folklore Studies Association of Canada, the American Folklore Society, and the International Society for Contemporary Legend Research. She is a past president of the American Folklore Society, past president of the International Society for Contemporary Legend Research, past president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Arts Council, and a member of the board of the trustees of the American Folklife Center of the Library Congress. In 2007, Diane was named Fellow of the American Folklore Society, and in 2019, she was awarded the Linda Day Lifetime Achievement Award in Legend Scholarship from the International Society for Contemporary Legend Research. She has served on numerous editorial boards, including the boards of the Journal of American Folklore, the Canadian Journal of Ethnologies, the Journal of Folklore Research, the Estonian Journal of Folklore, the British Journal of Folklore, the Journal of Applied Folklore, and Contemporary Legend. Diane has also served on the editorial boards of the Encyclopedia of Newfoundland and Labrador, the Encyclopedia of GLTBQ Life, the Special Publication Series in Folklore and Ethnomusicology, Indiana University, and the Legend Case book series for Utah State Press. Please join me in celebrating Diane Goldstein's achievement, of which we will continue to benefit from, because she is still hard at work.
Thank you, Solly. I'm just going to say a few little things here. Thank you, first of all, to Dave and to the staff for doing this. And I'd just like to say, for the last 11 years, while I've been at IU, the staff have been amazing, all the current staff, as well as, most especially, Chris and Michelle and Sherry. I know Sherry's here. I also want to thank all my colleagues from over the years for their many kindnesses, moments of support, and times when we've had really wonderful conversations. But most particularly, I would like to thank the grad students for always being inspiring and for teaching me pretty much everything I know. So I love you all. Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay, next up we have Bill Hansen. He will be presenting John McDowell.
I'm here to say some words about my colleague and pal, John McDowell. Folklorist John Holmes McDowell has focused his professional career on the artistic uses of speech and music, particularly the play of creativity and tradition. John was born in 1946 in Washington, D.C. and grew up initially in the Maryland suburbs and subsequently in New York City. He went on to do undergraduate work at Swarthmore College, majoring in music with a side interest in English literature, and then graduate work at the University of Texas, Austin, where in 1975 he was awarded a doctorate in anthropology/folklore. His interests in art and society blossomed in his professional work, in which he investigated different oral and musical forms with regard to their formal properties, the artistry of their performers, and their social roles. While a graduate student, John conducted field research with Chicano children in Austin, Texas, in connection with the Texas Children's Folklore Project under the supervision of Richard Bauman, one of John's mentors and subsequently a colleague at Indiana University. John's assignment was to document forms of traditional verbal expression among working-class Chicano children in the Austin area. His first book, Children's Riddling, traces the social and cognitive development of children through their verbal play, and won the Chicago Folklore Prize, the most prestigious honor for folkloristic books in the United States. Other publications on children's folklore followed, and in 2019, in recognition of his many scholarly contributions to the understanding of children's folklore, John was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Children's Folklore section of AFS. After completing graduate work, John joined the faculty of the Folklore Institute at Indiana University and initiated a series of field stays in the Sibundoy Valley, including in 1978-79 as a Fulbright Hayes Fellow, first among the Kamsa and then among the Inganos, two different but culturally similar indigenous groups. John's fieldwork in Colombia resulted in the publication of a pair of related books, Sayings of the Ancestors, The Spiritual Life of the Sibundoy Indians, and So Wise Were Our Elders, Mythic Narratives of the Kamsa. The former focuses upon a collection of some 200 traditional sayings widely known among the Inganos, who trace the sayings back to their ancestors, beings who lived in the remote past in a mythic time before the present world order. The sayings have to do with the interpretation of dreams and of particular waking experiences. John describes their formal properties and relates them to Ingano cosmology as reflected in mythology, spirit beliefs, and folk Catholicism. The companion volume, So Wise Were Our Elders, is an account of the genesis of the cosmos as the neighboring Kamsa view it, a mythological world that before John's investigations was little known elsewhere. John gives the native texts in Kamsa and English, supplementing them with discussions of the Kamsa language and poetics, the cultural context of the stories, and comparative observations on the Kamsa stories in relation to other Amerindian mythologies and to European folk narratives. A third major focus of John's research has been the tradition of Mexico's popular ballad form, the corrido, which likewise has culminated in a pair of related books. Although John's fondness for Mexican culture developed on its own when he was a young man, his interest in the corrido in particular was owed to another mentor during his student days at the University of Texas, Americo Paredes, himself an author of a classic study of the genre. At Paredes' suggestion, John visited the Costa Chica region of Mexico in 1972 in search of a living ballad tradition. Later, he returned to do extensive field work, documenting the tradition and investigating the complex role the corrido plays there. These researches resulted in a book with the striking title, Poetry and Violence, the ballad tradition of Mexico's Costa Chica, which includes a compact disc and audio tracks of corrido recordings. John followed up with a companion volume, Corrido, the living ballad of Mexico's West Coast, giving the verbal texts, musical scores, historical background of over 100 heroic ballads. On other fronts, John has served as chair of the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology, as well as editor of the department's principal periodical, Journal of Folklore Research. In addition, since its inception, he has been editor of the online book review publication, Journal of Folklore Research Reviews, which he co-founded with me in 2006. John has held many prestigious research fellowships, including at Guggenheim. He was elected a fellow of the American Folklore Society, and for his work locally, he was honored with the Faculty of the Year Award from the Indiana University Latino Faculty and Staff Council. More recently, he spent a semester as a visiting professor at Berkeley at the invitation of the folklore program at the University of California. John has deposited the ethnographic materials, recordings, photos, and so on from his fieldwork in the Archives of Traditional Music here at IU. Now a retiree, John will doubtless continue to make contributions to folkloristics, such as with the Diverse Environmentalism's Research Team project, which he helped start, as well as to spend time enjoyably with his wife, Pat Klushko, his children, Juan Jose, Sofia, and Michael, and his grandchildren.
Thank you, everybody. Definitely want to thank Bill Hansen for that erudite account of my scholarly publications. And I can just add a footnote or two. The book Children's Riddling, I think it's worth mentioning that it has a dedication. It's dedicated to Juan Jose, who is here today. Stand up, stand up. And in fact, I'm really very joyful today because I have all three of my children are with me at this table here. Also, my grandson, Gianni, and Isabel, who is with us as well. So that's fun. So let me just say that I was talking to Elizabeth Johnson not long ago at this event, and she said, "Are you the professor in the department who has been a professor longer than any other professor in the department?" And I started to think it through, and yes, maybe so, because there are others who have, exhibited some longevity, but I'm not sure anybody can challenge me with 46 years. 46 years. It reminds me of guys in the pen saying, "Man, how long have you been here?" Oh, I got that beat. But let me just say that the department, in a lot of ways, became my life, and I'm happy to say that after that engagement, both me and the department are still alive and well. So it's a beautiful world. Thank you.
Total of time spent on campus, John and Sue put together is about 100 years. It's incredible.
And yet we're only 53.
And yet the two of you, yeah, only 53.
I forgot to say something.
Yes.
At the table also is my amazing wife, Patricia.
each of our retirees, and they're located in the lobby. Those scrapbooks have in them pictures that are just incredible from throughout the time that our retirees were in the department. If you have a moment, sign the little the inscriptions there by the scrapbooks, and that's the gift that we're presenting with our honorees. Before you leave today, make sure you take a moment to page through those and maybe add your name. Our next presenter is Dr. Ruth Stone, who's going to be presenting Daniel Reed. Does this belong to anyone? No, I got it. Okay, thank you.
It's so good to see everybody. It's kind of like we woke out of a long sleep and we're all together again. Especially those of you that have come a long ways. And since I'm going to be talking about Daniel, it's so great to see you, Daniel, your family, your friends, people that are honoring you. And I just think of the time that's passed with Zoe and Adrian, and who were just babies when we all got started in this. It's terrific to see them grown up now. Anyway, let me just say a few words about Daniel, who I've been so blessed to be a colleague of all these years, and to still be a colleague and friend, even though I've retired formally from teaching in the department. I think of Daniel Boyce Reed as a kind of Renaissance member of Indiana University's faculty. Throughout his career, he's embraced knowledge and skill in a wide range of areas and developed his abilities to high levels of excellence. Daniel has distinguished himself as a researcher, teacher, administrator, multimedia pioneer, and consummate networker during his decades here. His colleagues and friends have called him generous, kind, gifted, and indefatigable. Of all the faculty members we've had here, he's one of those who has performed in Monkey Puzzle and Blue Sky Back, and he's been a composer, singer, bassist, and guitarist in those ensembles. A measure of his talent emerged in the selection of his composition, I Will Fall Down, that was performed for the opening of the World Parkinson's Congress in Kyoto, Japan in 2019. This song expressed Daniel Reed's inspirational personal engagement with Parkinson's over the years. Now to talk a little bit about the formal details of his career. Daniel completed his BA at Ohio University in 1985 and the MA and PhD degrees here in folklore and ethnomusicology with a minor in African studies. His dissertation was based upon field work in the Côte d'Ivoire on music and masking traditions among the Dan people, supported by a Fulbright fellowship. I feel particularly close to this research because Daniel's geographic area of research is not far from where I've worked among the Quetta people in Liberia. His conclusions have provided a strong basis for comparison of some of our findings. Following his PhD completion, he was appointed assistant professor at University of North Carolina in Greensboro. Several years later, we recruited him back as director of the Archives of Traditional Music. He returned here in 2001 and continued that administrative role at the Archives till 2007. During that time, he was simultaneously assistant professor in our department, and such an appointment as a director of an archives for an assistant professor was quite unprecedented, but Daniel more than proved himself up to the challenge. While serving as director of the archives, in conjunction with Virginia Danielson at Harvard, as well as several other units here on campus, he spearheaded several innovative digital research and preservation efforts, including 2 major preservation and access grants from the NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities, that were entitled Sound Directions, Digital Preservation and Access for Global Heritage These NEH grants laid the foundation for later campus-wide digitization projects that culminated just the last couple of years. He was subsequently promoted to the rank of Associate Professor, 2008, and the Laura Bolton Professor, 2017 to present, and the formal title of Professor in 2018. His first book, Tadhg Performance, Masks and Music in Contemporary Cote d'Ivoire, received high acclaim when it was awarded the Amory Talbot Prize by the Royal Anthropological Institute in the United Kingdom and designated the best book of African anthropology for that year. His second book, Abidjan, USA, Music, Dance, and Mobility in the Lives of 4 Ivorian Immigrants, 2016, explored complex expressive culture of musicians who live and perform in the United States, even as they move back and forth to their homeland in West Africa. This second book received elaborate praise for its broad reach, from the analytic to the experiential dimensions of expressive culture. Professor Reed's early foray into the area of multimedia in ethnomusicology demonstrated his talent for innovative approaches to the analysis and presentation of the complex performance of music, dance, and ritual. Most notably, he served as primary author and researcher with Gloria Gibson for an historic exploration of sound recording and photography entitled Music and the Culture of West Africa, the Strauss Expedition. He later contributed a research analysis of his Ivorian field recordings to the EMEA Digital Archive, 2009. Now, as those of you who might have been students here know, he has taught a wide range of courses over the years, beginning with a large introductory mural music class, but going on to courses like West African music, African popular music, global popular music, music and religious thought and experience. He's also taught in the core courses in ethnomusicology, the Paradigms course, Fieldwork, and the study of ethnomusicology. Finally, the History of Ideas with a course entitled Mobility in Ethnomusicology. He's tirelessly served on student exam committees and advised students on grant applications for a broad range of successful awards. Over the years, he has chaired or co-chaired 21 PhD dissertations and 2 MA theses. Complementing his exemplary research, teaching, and scholarship, Daniel Reed has served his profession, university, department, and the Bloomington community with a monumental range and depth of service. In the community, art patrons will long remember the effort he extended to arrange for the Kochinga Dance Company of Ivorian musicians and masked singers on these high stilts to open the Indiana University Eskenazi Museum's exhibit, Visions from the Forest, the Art of Liberia and Sierra Leone. There was this procession from the outer courtyard through the front entrance of the museum. It was 2015. Others will know of his work to raise funds for the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research, his campaign to save the Bradford Woods outdoor education program that works with the Monroe County school system, and his performance to raise money for the earthquake victims of Haiti. Daniel Reed's passion for serving Indiana University and the world will long be remembered. His humor and courage have given us all an exemplary model for our own lives as university citizens and community members. Thank you, Daniel, for all of this.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I wrote something so I would contain myself and not go on too long. Thanks so much to all of you for being here. It really means a lot to me. Ruth Stone, you've been my rock, my inspiration, my teacher, my mentor, my colleague and friend. I cannot thank you enough. Michelle, Emily, Angus, Tony, and all of you today, in person or in spirit, thank you so much. I first became attracted to ethnomusicology because I saw it, just as I viewed writing, recording, and performing music, as a means to bring about change. In a world fraught with fear of difference and misunderstanding, I saw ethnomusicology as one means to facilitate better understanding of difference, be it cultural, racial, regional, national, religious, class, ethnic, gender, or other. I came to see this department's particular approach to this endeavor, the pairing of folklore studies with the mode of ethnomusicology focused on music as human behavior, as an especially applicable means to these goals. Our department's interdisciplinary approach to studying music, along with the dynamic interdisciplinary African Studies program through which I earned my PhD minor, felt like a perfect fit to me. So when after my doctorate here, I was hired into my first position at the relatively conservative University of North Carolina at Greensboro School of Music as the sole ethnomusicologist on a faculty of over 50, I at first experienced a bit of culture shock. I had no degrees in music and felt like an alien, an outsider. But as I began to settle in, I reminded myself that they knew I had a PhD in folklore and had hired me anyway. This was one of those positions created in response to the National Association of Schools of Music accreditation directives to diversify music curricula. My job was to subvert their dominant paradigm. That was something I knew how to do. So I gleefully embraced the role. My training in this program had prepared me well for that challenge. When I learned of the opening back here at IU to direct the archives of traditional music and become faculty in the interdisciplinary department of folklore and ethnomusicology and affiliate faculty in African Studies, I got more than a little excited. Students among us, let me tell you, I have never worked harder on anything than I did in my preparation for that interview. I was so happy to have the chance to move back to Bloomington, a town I'd grown to love, and a university position that felt like a perfect fit. I arrived in the summer of 2001 for my first day as ATM director. The first thing I did was pull out the file folders of research I had done on transitioning sound archives from the analog to the digital era, and put them on my desk to read. Immediately I heard a drip, drip sound in my office, which I traced to the air conditioning unit in the ceiling. Digital preservation and access would have to wait. My first months were dominated by physical infrastructure improvements, including ongoing infrastructural renovations necessitated by the major water line break that had flooded the entire downstairs of the ATM just weeks after I accepted my position. Despite this inauspicious start, I loved my job. My time at the ATM had many highlights, including hiring Mike Casey, perhaps the most important move of my directorship, working with him and Al Burdett and others at the ATM staff, in collaboration with Ginny Danielson and others at Harvard, creating the Sound Directions Project, setting standards and best practices for the new field of digital audio preservation. Another standout memory was engaging in deeply moving digital repatriation efforts with Native American and West African communities. And of course, I also loved teaching, and the minimal opportunities I still had for field research. But after 4 years, I became a single dad of a 5- and 2-year-old kids. The ATM had become very busy, and I was working closely with increasingly more graduate students in the department. I hung on for 2 more years before deciding that something had to give. Despite my ideological commitment to the work of administering the ATM's mission of preserving and creating access to its rich collections of recorded heritage, I decided to let it go to focus on the 2 things that I loved most about my job, teaching and doing field research. So I moved full-time into the department, again, where I felt the best fit. Sometimes when describing what I do to the outside world, I will say something like, I work at a place with really interesting people who travel off to locations near and far and get to know people involved in art and music, learn from them, and come back together to talk about it, all to better understand human beings and make the world a better place. What a great job this has been. And one of my favorite parts of that job has been working with graduate students, building long-term relationships with these always fascinating and wonderful people, and seeing them go on to do good work in the world. Let me close with just a couple more thank yous. All graduate students, those here and those who are not, you know who you are. Thank you for enriching my life. To the many Ivorian friends and field collaborators, both those on the continent and here in the U.S., who have taught me so much and supported my career, I say, Inue Barung, Barika Barika. Staff over the years have been tremendously supportive. I've appreciated to thank them all. A few stand out for their long-term support. Ruth Hayden, Belle McCarmichael, Camille Rice from the old days, Sherry Sherrill, and Chris Roush from just the sort of old days, and Michelle Malhouse from the old days, but she's still here. You've been like family, and I thank you for following me. And to my many friends in the IU faculty in and outside our department, and too many to name, as well as the fabulous community of Bloomington friends outside IU, whether you're here with us today physically or in spirit, thank you for your support, your friendship, and love. And finally, to my family, my ancestors, my parents now gone, who taught me to love music, experiential education, the importance of dreaming and helping others, my stepmother, my brothers, and last but far from least, the true Reed clan, my wife Christy, and in reverse alphabetical order, my children Zoe, Jessica, Connor, and Adrian. Your support and love has inspired and sustained this journey, and I thank you all. Thank you.
See, John, he got all of them. Our next presenter is Dr. Brandon Barker, who's going to be presenting Dr. Tuohy. Come on up, Brandon.
I'm happy, I'm honored to get to stand here and say a few words about a term that I came up with in grad school were people who are my footnote heroes. The citations that I'm so proud to make. More than one of you sit in this room, but one of my most prized footnote heroes, Professor Gregory Schrempp. And as it turns out, this is the third time that I've had an opportunity to speak towards my admiration of Professor Schremp's work and his career. The first time was when I presented on his book called The Science of Myth and Vice Versa, 2016 at the Departmental Book Party. The second time was whenever I actually got to have a Zoom chat, pseudo interview with Greg to put together the retirement bio, most of which appears in your program today. And so this is the third time. Now, you would think that I might have learned this lesson from my Free Will Baptist preaching evangelical grandfather, but in fact, it took my lessons from Gregory Schrempp to know that it's always nice to land on a mythical number. So Greg and Nina, congratulations to you on this auspicious spring day. I've been in Bloomington for almost 10 years, and I'm going to say a couple things that are kind of personal. I remember precisely the moment whenever I met Greg Schrempp. I showed up in Indiana 10 years ago thinking about illusions, thinking about folklore in its intersection with science. I knew Greg's article, Inflections of Science, a Journal of Folklore Research publication, really well. And it was at the first departmental beginning of the year symposium, or what do we call those things? Annual pre-meeting, what do we call those? Party, yeah. Retreat, oh yeah, we call it a retreat. Sorry, that wasn't a planned joke, I actually forgot the word retreat. So we were there, and I was anxious, as maybe you can tell I'm a little bit anxious now, to go up and say hello to Greg because I admired his work. Whenever I did, he immediately told me about Nina's work with the paradox of timbre. And since then, I haven't stopped thinking about Greg's work with science and folklore. I haven't stopped thinking about ideas like perceptualization. I want to say that to say that you all continue to be a really important part of my intellectual life. And then, as far as being welcome to Bloomington, really early that first year, Greg invited me to his house to have dinner with Dan and Mandy Peretti, Dan being one of Greg's prized students, beloved students, who now is faculty at Memorial University in Newfoundland. And I just received, via Dan's cellular neural correlate, a congratulations and thank you from Dan and Mandy up in Newfoundland. At that party, I remember the leg of lamb that we had. I remember the wine. I remember feeling welcomed and happy. I remember that being one of the first social occasions where my family, Ellen and I, realized that we were probably in the place that we wanted to be as long as we could be here. And I also remember asking Greg what I take to be now really silly questions about mythologists, some of high reputation and some of low reputation. And as is the case now, it was the case then, Greg just gave me really good and really honest answers, which is the only kind of answers Greg ever gives to the questions that we make of him. I want to mention a few highlights from Greg's bio, some things that I learned in that aforementioned chat interview. Greg was born in Clarkston on the Washington-Idaho border, and he credits an excellent high school Catholic boys' school education for his interest in mythology. Now, Greg, of course, moved past sectarian concerns pretty quickly, but one thing that's true of Greg's work is that he always asks seriously, I'll come back to this word again, honestly, ancient and pervasive questions. We can call them mythological questions, we can call them philosophical questions. We could be talking about cosmic contingencies. We could be talking about the very possibility of life. We could be talking about the prediction of that which can or cannot happen. And Greg credits an early education as a pathway towards thinking about these timeless questions which so few of us are brave enough to continue to ask, and ask them in a really serious way. After high school, Greg enrolled in an anthropology course at Washington State University, and he let me know that it was after the very first lecture that he sat on in anthropology. He walked right over to the administration building and became an anthropology major. He knew what he wanted to do. It is not surprising that whenever he graduated with his bachelor's in 1972, it was with highest honors, a member of Phi Beta Kappa. He went from Washington State actually to the Folklore Institute at Indiana University. And he worked with folklorists like Richard Dorson and Linda Tadhg. He also worked with anthropologists who were interested in mythology, including Jerome Mintz and David Bidney. In 1975, Greg received his MA from the Folklore Institute at Indiana University, and then he headed to the University of Chicago, where he earned a second MA and his PhD in anthropology. And he began working with his mentor, Marshall Salins, who of course fostered Greg's interest in the Pacific and pointed him towards Polynesia. In 1981, Greg received a Fulbright and set out to study the Maori archives in New Zealand. The following year, he took a position at the Center for Maori Studies and Research at the University of Waikato. Greg calls his committee at the University of Chicago a dream committee. It included Marshall Salins as his chair, and David Snyder, George Stocking, Valerio Valeri. He defended his dissertation, Maori Cosmogonic Thought, in 1987. Now, few of us are this lucky, but at the time of his defense, Greg had already accepted an academic position at Wesleyan University in the Department of Anthropology, and he held that position for 4 years. But it was after a, well, let's say a chance meeting, a fortuitous meeting with some people in this room, that he learned that the IU folklore faculty was indeed ready to hire a mythology expert. So his stint at Wesleyan ended, and he joined IU in 1989. Of course, here as faculty, he has been affiliated with IU's Classical Studies program. He has taught many classes on mythology, on history of the discipline, on readings in ethnography. He worked with his friend, Bill Hansen, on organizing a new symposium, an intentional follow-up to the symposium that produced Thomas Sebeok's influential Mythosymposium. And the new symposium was no less successful. Greg has been awarded the Trustees Teaching Award, the Teaching Excellence Award. He's received several course development grants for specialized courses in myth. He just recently gave us all a great pedagogical gift in his book, The Truth of Myth, World Mythology and Theory in Everyday Life, co-written with Tobe Thompson, a poignant overview of the theories and history of myth scholarship that constitutes, well, something that will be useful for us in the years and decades to come. You all can, of course, read the summary that I put together of Greg's work in your program. And I know that we all feel a sense of pride when we think of Greg's breakdown of popular science writing in books like The Ancient Mythology of Modern Science. Mythologists look seriously at popular science writing. his 2016 book, Science, Bread, and Circuses, Folkloristic Essays in the Science for the Masses. I come back to this article, Inflections of Folk, and I just want to say that I've thought a lot about this particular topic, that is the use of the term folk in the sciences, both empirical sciences and historical sciences. And I would say that there is an entire industry around the study of topics like folk psychology or folk physics, not to mention all the myriad sub-industries dedicated to this particular question. And without getting into particulars, I'll just say that Greg's 1993 article is the most important writing on this particular topic that we have to this day. I still depend upon it greatly. And then, of course, none of us will ever probably stop trying to figure out, think through the paradoxes that Greg presented to us in his first book, Magical Arrows, bringing Immanuel Kant into conversation with Zeno, into conversation with Maori cosmology. For myself, I kind of think of Greg's work as an example of paradox. It always seems, every single subtle little insight feels simultaneously ancient, timeless, while also being cutting edge and brand new. He begins that book, Magical Arrows, reminding us, yet we know that humans not only pose answers to the unanswerable, but also often locate the most fundamental principles of their lives in times and places that will never be encountered as matters of direct sensory experience. I take it as a fact that our disciplines, folklore and ethnomusicology, deal with the unique essence of what it means to be human. I know a few folkloristic thinkers who capture that essence greater than Greg's work. One of the things I'm most proud of is that I was able to convince Professor Schrempp and Professor Hansen to work with my friend Danny Povinelli, who's a scientist in the empirical sciences, who spent 30 years working with chimpanzees. And we brought them together in a discussion of fables. And it was just a dream come true to get to bring Greg's important work to empirical scientists and have them think through the problems, let's say, of anthropomorphism together. We know that anthropomorphism is ancient. We know, for example, the ideas of folklore and the folkloresque are sort of newish. Greg's cutting-edge addition to that book was a new, let's call it, folklore, folkloresque genre known as the fakel. And, well, I won't repeat a particular fakel for you today. I'll just say that one fakel ends by turning the Wittgensteinian idea that thereof we must be silent to the idea that thereof one can eat. I even have a hard time classifying Greg's thinking. I reckon somewhere between a naive dualist or an empirical metaphysicist, but this is of course a Saturday, and if we were to have gathered on a Sunday, I would have leaned more forcefully into one of Greg's heroic items in a series. Some of you have heard of heroic couplets. Speaking of my aforementioned friend Danny, one of my favorite couplets that is meant to capture the uniqueness of human minds, it is that only our species thinks of gods, ghosts, and gravity. Well, Greg ups the ante, and he has put together some really excellent, what I like to call triumvirate triplets. So the first is an item of the series set that is meant to communicate the categories of the anthropocentric search for anthropomorphic aberrations. I'll say that again. The anthropocentric search for anthropomorphic aberrations. And these are traditional monsters, Garfield the cat, and the belief that the planet Mars has a human face. This next list is an explanation for human existence in the cosmos. And this is God, Gaia, and Goldilocks. Okay, comic strips, the man in the moon, this is all playful stuff, and clearly I don't have time to unpack the dense philosophical moves that Greg makes in his work. But I mention them because I just want to close and say that I've also come to know Greg and Greg's works as something that can be quite playful. And so I thought I would share a playful.
This morning, I was thinking about what it is that one has to have to feel that one has had a fortunate life. And I came up with a list. And given the compressed time here, I'm just going to give you the list, which turns out to be a pretty good summary of things that have already been said by other speakers here. So, quickly and without ado, if you're an academic, you need good students. So, nothing like good students to keep you energized and going, especially as you get later on in the career. So, thank you to the student. Secondly, you need good support staff. And I'm very grateful that we've always had very good support staff, including Michelle and Ruth and Sherry and Chris. So thanks to all of you. Thirdly, this is a big one. You need a good topic. Some of you know that I've had some beefs with folkloric methods and procedures, but I've never strayed from thinking that the substance of what folklore studies is kind of the very essence of everything. Some of you have heard me go on about the importance of the recent English translation after half a century of Andre Dolis's Einfache Formen, or simple forms, which argues that the so-called simple forms, which of course aren't simple, namely myth, legend, folktale, and minor, so-called minor forms like riddle, proverb, and so on, summarize the possible ways in which humans engage the cosmos. Some of you have probably heard Hassan el-Shami, the great thinker, talk about his love for the motif index, and he says it's a cosmology. It summarizes all possibilities of the cosmos. And it does in a way, but only the content of the cosmos, and not the different ways in which humans engage that content. For that you need the different kinds of folkloric forms, the mystery of the riddle, the quest for certainty of myth, the quest for marvel in the folktale, the need for practical rules of engagement in the proverb, and so on. So you need a good topic, and folklore has that, and for me it always has had that. And fourthly, it at least helps to have a good spouse. So, thank you, Nina. Fifthly, it helps to have good friends, and I have many of those. Sixthly, in my opinion, or at least for me, you got to have a good dog. A wonderful dog, Cosmos, could not be here. There's something else on it today. It has to come out 7, since 7 is a primary mystical number. And so 7, you have to have a good promoter. So thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Greg. Our final honoree for the evening is Dr. Tuohy, of course, and her work and career will be presented lovingly by Dr. Daniel Reed. Come on up, Daniel. In the biology
biography of Sue Tuohy that Ruth Stone and I wrote for the 2021 booklet honoring retiring IU faculty. We noted that colleagues described her as generous, dedicated, and kind. At the risk of triggering Sue's resistance to anything even resembling essentialism, I assert that these three words do capture something essential about her approach to life. Sue Mary Claire Tuohy came to IU from Virginia Commonwealth University, where she completed a BM in Music History and Piano in 1978, as well as an MM in Music History in 1983. Here at IU, Sue earned an MA from our department in 1981, followed in 1998 with a PhD with minors in East Asian languages and cultures and Chinese language and literature. Sue was then hired as Associate Director for the East Asian Studies Center, where from 1988 to 1994, she played a major role in writing and administering national and international grants, conferences, and other programs for the center, all skills she would apply to folklore and ethnomusicology's benefit when, in 1994, the department made the wise choice to hire her as faculty. For the next 26 years, Sue generously and tirelessly served the department, the university, and the disciplines of folklore and ethnomusicology. Throughout the 1990s, Sue played a key role in helping shape the core ethnomusicology curriculum. She directed the ethnomusicology program from 1997 to 1999, served a term as Director of Undergraduate Studies, and dedicated many hours service to other committees in the department. I remember well the latter period of my graduate studies in the mid to late 90s, when Ronald Smith became a dean, then tragically fell ill and passed. And Portia Maltby, Melanie Burnham, and others were strewn across campus and other departments. Ethnomusicology in our department at that point was essentially the Ruth and Sue show. Sue was central to the building and running of our distinguished ethnomusicology graduate program during those years of large student cohorts and very few faculty. Even after the ethnomusicology faculty expanded in the 2000s, Sue continued playing a central role in all things ethno, from chairing graduate admissions to serving a second term as Director of Undergraduate Studies, not to mention her dedicated service to East Asian languages and cultures and the university at large. No matter how heavy the burden, Sue's work was always accompanied with a kind smile and her hearty laughter. Sue's research shows that same dedication to the craft of ethnography, to her Chinese research collaborators, and to the academic communities in which she has left lasting impressions across multiple disciplines and continents. She has conducted fieldwork in China for nearly 40 years, documenting the arts and social and political life during an important period in the life of that changing nation-state. When Sue began her field research in Northwest China in 1983, the country was just opening up after the Cultural Revolution. Sue's initial research explored the role of Hua folk songs in constructions of Chinese national imaginaries, from local festivals to national cultural policy. Her research since has covered many subjects, including the arts and cultural policy, national heritage programs, biocultural diversity preservation, landscape drama, and ecotourism. Sue's career as a China specialist has been augmented by her fluency in speaking, reading, and writing Chinese, jump-started when she attended Nankai University in Shenzhen from 1983 to 1985. Over the years, she's returned many times to conduct ethnographic research, teach, and consult on the development of ethnomusicology programs in China, where she frequently lectures in Chinese. Sue's expertise is also reflected in her selection as consultant for the 2014 Smithsonian Folklife Festival China program, and in Indianapolis Museum of Art's project on the visual and performing arts of Qinghai province from 1992 to 1994. Sue's research output has included numerous influential and frequently cited articles. Among my favorites are The Social Life of Genre, The Dynamics of Folk Song in China, 1999, The Sonic Dimensions of Nationalism in Modern China, Musical Representation and Transformation from 2001, Reflexive Cinema, Reflecting on and Representing the World of Chinese Film and Music from 2008, and Collecting Flowers, Defining a Genre, Zhang Yaoshang, sorry if I'm butchering these names, I'm sure I am, and the Anthology of Hua Folk Songs in 2018. In recent years, Sue, along with John McDowell, Rebecca Dirksen, and others, created the Diverse Environmentalism Research Team, or DIRT, a collaborative project involving research, pedagogy, a symposium, and recently a published book. But as for Sue Tuohy, the teacher, oh, what a teacher she is. I had the good fortune of having my first ever university teaching experience under her mentorship when I served as her AI for World Music and Culture during her first year on the faculty. Her rigorous and demanding yet friendly approach to pedagogy served as a model that I emulated throughout my career. The high quality of Sue's classroom teaching was evident throughout her course offerings, regardless of topic, from Chinese music and film, cultural diversity in China, music and social movements, music and senses of place, to courses on music and tourism and cultural heritage, sound studies, ecomusicology, fieldwork methods, intellectual history, and theories of ethnomusicology. Former students surely recall Sue's loving attention to detail. From her short story-length assignment guidelines to her novella-length syllabi, Sue's commitment to clear expectations evidenced how deeply she cared about students and their success. And that continues to this day. I'm still serving on some committees with her. She isn't soft. This attention to detail comes to full fruition in the generous, abundant, voluminous written feedback Sue provides on graduate student papers, grant proposal drafts, and other writing. Her dedication to helping students fully manifest their potential as writers and thinkers is seemingly inexhaustible. I know of no one who gives more energy and time to students, no one who works harder than Sue Tuohy. No wonder she co-chaired more than 30 PhD dissertations and served as a member on an additional 70 graduate student committees, and won the Trustees Teaching Award 4 times during her career. Allow me to illustrate this last point with a brief anecdote. I will never forget a lunch I shared with Sue in late spring 1998, outside on the patio at Yogi's, which used to be our auxiliary office, you might recall. I had begun drafting my dissertation and was struggling to find a voice. Kindly but incisively, Sue said something to the effect of, "I don't see Daniel Reed in this draft. I don't see the excitement and passion I know you have for ethnomusicology." It was just exactly the advice that I needed. I scrapped that draft, took a break from writing, reread several of my favorite ethnomusicological ethnographies, and started again writing, having remembered why I believed ethnomusicology mattered. Sue could not have given me such advice had she not really known me, and had she not read my writing with care. Again, Sue's dedication of her time, her energy, and herself to her students is unparalleled. When I returned to IU as faculty, I learned that the warmth and generosity Sue showed students was also operative in her relationship with colleagues. Sue was always eager to share ideas about courses, syllabi, assignment guidelines, scanned copies of readings, you name it. For Sue, the pursuit of knowledge is a shared, collaborative endeavor. That's the value system she's lived and worked by, benefiting us all for all these years. Please join me in toasting Sue. For all your great work, your generosity, your dedication, and your kindness, Sue Tuohy, we thank you.
Well, that was beautiful, wasn't it? I just have a few prepared remarks today. Don't worry, this is single-spaced. Kind of like those dissertation comments, right, Jessica? Thank you all for coming. You know, after listening to all these talks and wonderful talks, I must say, so I retired 2 years ago, and there's something I still regret. I never was able to take Greg Schremp's reading and ethnography, and I'm very sorry for that because I know I would have learned so much. The other thing is early on, when we both became faculty members, Greg Schrempp and I were going to do a 2-sequence course on the ballad. Greg was going to teach lingering, and I was going to teach leaping. And we never had a chance to do that. So thank you all for coming. I came to IU in 1979. That was 43 years ago, so I've contributed a lot to this, 100-year whatever. I was a graduate student, and I still remember so clearly that first week on campus. So I walked into the Folklore Institute in 504 North Hess, and there was this red wallpaper, remember, with the eagles on it? And Sid Grant and Velma Carmichael were there later, Ruth Ayton, and
Chris Rausch and Camille Rice and Sherry Sherrill, Michelle Melhouse. I mean, there's so many wonderful people that have come. And I remember that first week on the weekend, on Saturday, Ruth Stone and Berlin Stone invited us to their home to have a workshop on field recording. And it was a wonderful day of fun, of commensality, and of the beginnings, for me at least, of a very warm and welcoming community of just such inspiring and smart people. And I still feel lucky to this day for being part of that community, because it's continued to this day. There were a lot of ethnomusicologists at our house that day, by the way. There were a lot of us. And I'd like to remember first some of those who are no longer with us. I remember Edson Richmond and Warren Roberts, who were such gentlemen in the finest sense of those words, as well as scholars. As well as some of my teachers, Richard Dorson, Alan Merriam, Ronald Smith, Roger Janelli, scholars all, and wonderful people all. I've had a lot of really good mentors, but I especially, my eyes are not going to the right place. Where's Ruth Stone? Oh, okay. Ruth Stone, I really especially would like to mentor. She was my PhD dissertation advisor, but she's also been a wonderful colleague of the years who supported me through a number, including some hard times, including when I was sick. She was so supportive. But we also had fun. We went to St. George Island for the SEM board meetings, and she helped pick out almost all the furniture in my house. She has a much better eye and aesthetic than I do for these things. When I was first hired in ethnomusicology in 1994, as Daniel mentioned, there weren't very many ethnomusicologists, so Ruth and I did a lot of things together. But then we were lucky to have Portia Maltsby and Melanie Burnham join us. And I remember so vividly when we all gathered together in each of our homes with Alan Burdett and Charles Sykes, some other ethnomusicologists. We were going to write the proposal to establish the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology. It was a big thing for us. But that was always accompanied by food and always accompanied by such high spirits. That's something I remember about, and I will always remember about the ethnomusicology faculty. We always had fun. One of the highlights of my teaching career, though, I had to say, is the opportunity to teach with Dick Bauman. We taught for years together F501. We did all the work together, and he was just a treat. And in terms of research, as Daniel mentioned, I work with Rebecca Dirksen and John McDowell on the diverse environmentalism team. It's been just a delight, but it also helped me articulate a new strand of research for myself, which is great. In addition, I've been fortunate to be part of the East Asian Studies program here at IU since I was a student. Later, I was hired by Bob Eno, who was then, this is in 1987, as a graduate assistant. He was the Associate Director of East Asian Studies. And later, I became the Associate Director for 6 years. The East Asian Languages and Culture faculty always warmly welcomed me and treated me as if I were just one of them, 100% FTE in the department, and I appreciate it. In addition, I have wonderful colleagues and friends in China who have encouraged me, taught me so much, and welcomed me into their programs as well. There are a number of things that I think about. I've had, and I can't mention you all, I wish I could. In fact, in these 40 pages, single space, actually, I lied, are the names of so many of you, and I wish I could mention you all. I've had so many supportive, inspiring, hardworking colleagues over the years, throughout the years, and likewise the same with students. I mean, we really have a special set of students. I'm not going to say they're unique, because remember I banned the word unique from all of your dissertations, but they're special. And I think one of the things I was worried about when I retired was, wait a minute, these students keep teaching me, make me go in new directions all the time, new research topics, new ways of thinking about enduring questions. What will I do when I retire? Fortunately, I keep working with them. I'm on several dissertation committees still. But I thank you all. Our student, just as when I was a graduate student, our students are not only hardworking and smart and all of those things we expect of graduate students, but they also care about each other and they support each other. And that's been obvious again this year when some of our students who also are graduate workers have devoted their time and energy to working together to unify graduate workers and to make conditions better for future generations. So I thank you all. So I've been lucky, you know, like someone, was it Daniel that said this? I've been lucky. I get to go out and talk to people and listen to music and go to events and, you know, take notes. And they call that research. I also have never had to teach a course that I didn't absolutely love the topic and think it mattered. But most of all, I'm lucky to be part of this community over the years, and I'll remain part of this community. And I'd like to thank you all.
Thank you, Sue. I think everyone could take a little bit of enjoyment out of those comments. If anything, listening to everyone, both presenters and honorees, I feel very lucky, not only to be in this department, but to be doing this work. And I hope you all feel the same.
A perpetuation of a tradition that has been going on at least since the 90s. I don't know if Alan knows when it first started. But a number of us have been involved in this for a long time, and that is honoring important moments in our colleagues and friends' lives, especially retirees, with a song rewritten with rewritten lyrics in honor of that person. And we must definitely evoke, and will evoke, the spirit of Clara Henderson, who was really the engine behind this tradition. And definitely looking down on us with smiles today to see it continuing, I'm sure. So, before I knew COVID was going to keep us from retiring, or keep us from having this event for so long, I put together a little medley in honor of my other retiring colleagues. And that's what we'll start with. And then something after that. Thank you.
Great talk. Thank you. It's really good.
A joke, and our papers no longer smell like smoke. Oh no, why you gotta go? Ay, 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 sing. Cultural performances won't mean a thing, and heritage tourists will all stay home. Without Tuohy, so much remains unknown. Tuohy, Tuohy, oh no, why you gotta go? Ay, 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 is this Tuohy, Tuohy? Oh, baby, why you gotta go? He started in New Zealand with Maori cosmogony, took him back to Aristotle and comparative mythology. Then he blinded me with science. He blinded me with science. What we've been trailblazing anthropology. How do you get from folk test to mythology of science? Science! Science! Folklore of the universe, mythology of science. Science! Science! He found Kant among the Maori and explored the dark side of me. He remythologized the cosmos. We could call it his Schrempology. Then he blinded me with science. He blinded us with science. What trailblazing anthropology. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Some things in life are bad, they can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, just give Goldstein a whistle. She'll record your story every word. If a legend's what you need, call on good old Goldstein. She explains to us the cheery side of life. From infanticide to AIDS, psychopaths and crying babes. She teaches us how story transcends strife. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Life's a piece of shit when you look at it. Most folklorists avoid the crap, it's true. But if darkness is your thing, if you need a folk vaccine, Goldstein is the folklorist for you. What really makes it tick is when you're feeling sick. She taught us our beliefs can make us well. When life is dark and gory, just tell it in a story, and you can make a heaven out of hell. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Let us sing a corrido, if you please, we ask your attention. Let's commemorate a hero who's departed from Bhutan. He met his match in El Retiro, the villain who finally stopped John. He learned riddles from the Negroes, mastered myths of our wise elders, taught us poetry and violence, honored as an AFS speller, a scholar and grammarian, no one could do it weller. He survived 4 terms as chairman, where he vanquished every foe. Every dean and administration, John fought for the sake of folklore. He prevailed in every battle till his duel with El Retiro. First, his enemy he eluded, running far away to the west. But his hideout out in Berkeley only delayed his ultimate test. The villain that met him at IU's border, and our sad story, you know the rest. But dear listeners, you must remember, John's great influence still abounds. While Retiro emptied his office, John's words of wisdom will ever resound. We will remember how wise was our elder, even when John's no longer around. Schauert, who are joining us this week. Long live Clara.
Long live Clara.
Okay. Hello. Let's give it up for Daniel one more time. And all of our retirees. Thank you, Daniel. And now we have a special little, if we tried to keep it a surprise, I don't think he figured it out. This is for Daniel. I wrote this shortly after I got the email that he is retiring this year. I think I got that email in January or February. Wrote this in honor of him. And I hope he likes it. It's one of his favorite bands. I know that much. And I have to sing on it. I apologize in advance.
And you may find him living in the Ivory Coast. Or you may find him in his native Mansfield, Ohio. Or you may find him behind the desk of a large archive. Or you may find him just singing in his own house with his beautiful voice. And you might ask yourself, well, how did he get there? And this is not goodbye, still living in the same town, still need his sound advice, knowledge flowing all around into the blue sky back. After monkey puzzle, draw of a lifetime, knowledge flowing all around. And you may ask yourself, how do I do field work? And you may ask yourself, where is that masquerade from? And you may tell yourself, this is not the same department. And you may tell yourself, this is not as beautiful a sight. Still living in the same town, still needed sound advice, knowledge flowing all around into the blue sky back. After monkey puzzle, rough a lifetime, knowledge flowing all around. A sage if there ever was, 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 a sage if there ever was. Stressors dissolving and stressors removing. There is life after becoming emeritus. Let the new faculty carry the burden. Remove him from committees of the dissertations. And this is not goodbye. Still living in the same town. Still need his sound advice. Knowledge flowing all around into the blue sky back. After monkey puzzle, prof of a lifetime. Knowledge flowing all around. And you may ask yourself, what is donkey performance? And you may ask yourself, where do Ivorian migrants go? And you may ask yourself, can I find them in digital form? And you may say to yourself, my God, how much he's done. And this is not goodbye. Still living in the same town. Still need his sound advice. Knowledge flowing all around into the blue sky back. After monkey puzzle, prof of a lifetime. Knowledge flowing all around. A sage if there ever was. A sage if there ever was. A sage if there ever was. And look where his office was. Time to live it up. Time for only fun stuff. A sage if there ever was. 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 Thank you, Daniel.